Let's go, baby. We back after a very brief sabbatical. I'm back in the building. I hope everybody's doing good. I'm gonna let y'all know right now. I hope y'all ready, because I'm ready, ladies and gentlemen, especially ladies. I want to welcome everybody back to episode 4 of the Game 7 podcast. That's right, we're at episode 4. Today, it's your boy Pete with Game 7 TV, and we about to bring you the topics that we about to get into this week. First one we're going to talk about is going to be the vice presidential debate. And we're going to talk about this Knicks trade. Got to talk about that Knicks trade. We're going to talk about the NFL recap. We're going to talk about everything that's going on with the NFL. And we're going to get into the season that Shohei Ohtani just had. And then we're going to tap in with a couple of personal goals I want to set for the rest of the year. So let's get right to the first topic. Last night was the vice presidential debate. And I'll tell you right now, I didn't even want to watch it. But my biggest takeaway from it after starting to watch it was the fact that there's actually still a chance for civil discourse in this country. Last night, that's what they were doing. It was civil discourse. As I was watching it, I actually sent out a tweet during the actual debate, and I said that the way that J.D. Vance and Tim Walz are engaging in civil discourse between each other while trying to win a debate is what the country needs more of. And there's a lot of people that responded because people are tired of all the theatrics and all the political theater and all the gaslighting that goes on. Like the constant end of the world gaslighting that both sides constantly engage into to manipulate the narratives that they force feed the public. People are tired of it. They don't want to just get gaslit anymore. They just want to hear what your thoughts are, hear what you're going to provide, and then let people make a decision from there. And that's what they were able to do last night. I was really surprised. I threw it on like I'm going to just watch this as I fall asleep. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, they're kind of calm right now. They're not doing the normal, real crazy talking that both sides do. And I even checked after the debate was over. I went to a couple of different channels, Fox, CNN, all of them. And, one of the things that they were talking about was the fact that it was a relatively calm debate. And I was really surprised. And I think that it just lets people know that, eventually it's going to be based on what the marketplace decides, right? Politically, the votes that people give people is like their marketplace being like what they're voting for, right? So I think that as we start to show more and more that we're looking for just calm discourse and that more and more of us need to strive to be able to engage with each other in a calm way. Look, we're not all going to agree on everything, but the one thing that we should be able to agree to is being able to calmly or at least listen and understand what the other people are trying to say, because trying to understand the other people that don't agree with you's perspective is a great way for you to expand the way that you look at things. And I think that seeing two people go at each other like that in a calm way, and at the end, they brought their wives on stage and introduced each other and all those different things. It was more of what like politics needs to be. It needs to be more like sports, where you get on the field, you compete, and then at the end of the day, may the best man or woman win. And that's really what we need to see more of from our political leaders. We need to see them actually stop trying to manipulate and force feed us narratives that the social media companies end up echoing back to us. That's what I'm tired of, man. It's all these echo chambers, and that's all people seem to keep looking for. They just want to find their side and hear the things that they want to hear back. And I'm just glad that other people took note of it too. Because I was usually when you start to go down the Twitter rabbit hole, you just start to see people say crazy things, but a lot of people agreed with what I had to say, and a lot of other people were saying similar things as we were watching the debate. Now, as far as what that's going to do for the overall race as a whole, before the debate started, I remember, I don't even have to look because I remember the numbers are pretty simple to remember. It was 50-48 in favor of Kamala on polymarket.com. And then in the morning, it didn't really change much yesterday. In the morning, it went to like 50-49. And then right before I recorded this, it had got to 50-50. So we're literally in a dead heat. It's literally a coin flip, like I've been saying. We're going to find out on election day or the day after or how long it takes for them to get through the votes and certify the votes that they got. It's going to be It's going to come down to the wire. I also, when I was looking, because I find it, me being somebody that's like a huge student of communication and how people communicate and try to get better at communication and understanding communication and teaching communication to people throughout my life, I found it strategically. You could tell last night watching Vance versus Walls that Vance was a lot more at home. He was a lot more in his element. And I was like, this guy had to be like on the debate team or something like that. Now, just because you're able to out-debate somebody as far as the performance you have, it still comes down to what's the policy stances that you have versus what the other person has that people are going to use to vote at the end of the day. All we saw was a healthy debate, which we need more of, and we saw somebody who's actually really good at debating, regardless of what he has to say, just the way that he carried himself on the stage. And I think that everybody, you're going to see the other side talk about the lies and all that. I'm not here to fact check anybody. And as anybody knows who's seen an episode here, you guys know you're not going to get an echo chamber. You're not going to get a partisan take. It's going to be unbiased. And an unbiased view of what happened, Vance clearly knows how to debate better than Walls. But I give a shout out to Walls for at least sticking in there and not giving up and trying, even though he had some moments where he fumbled. But at the end of the day, it's going to be based on who the actual presidents are that people are voting for. This is going to be a small part of the equation. But I just thought that it was interesting. Anybody who's trying to improve at communication, just look at how comfortable he looked up there on stage. And like, there's a moment where, he's like, hey, can I have a moment to the moderator? And he's like, thank you, Margaret. I think her name was Margaret. He's like, thank you, Margaret. And then goes into it. And then he also broke all his points down that he wanted to get across within a certain time period. And I like I said, I was like, let me see if this guy, I wanted to know if he was on a debate team before, but I couldn't get confirmation of him being on a debate team. I did get confirmation, however, that he's apparently was, working real hard with trying to prepare for this. Let me pull up the article. Let's go here. So this one was one that I saw from, where is this article? I got it right here. Hold on. Here we go. So Reuters, I apologize for that delay. But it goes, this from Reuters, and they were saying that Walls and Vance focus on policy over personal attacks as it happened. And it goes, Walls and Vance shared what might be called a Midwestern nice approach to Tuesday night's more than 90-minute discourse. Americans who watched the vice presidential debate between Walls and Vance were in for a big surprise. A cordial tone and an emphasis on ideas the two have in common. They shook hands at the start and lingered afterwards to introduce their wives. And, that's what I'm saying. Like, it was a little bit surprising because of all the heated rhetoric we're so used to getting from both sides. Both sides are guilty of this, regardless of what their stance is. They try to paint the other side and the opponent as something that's like the end of the world. That's why I said they got to stop with all the end of world gaslighting that they're literally going to be back saying the same thing next election cycle on both sides. So that was the poly market thing. And then, like I said, to kind of finish up my overview of everything, I just thought that the main takeaway was that it wasn't contentious. They just calmly made their points. They engaged in dialogue with each other. And regardless of which ideas you subscribe to, we need more civil discourse. The more we're able to have conversations that aren't emotionally charged, the more we're going to be able to work towards middle ground, because all of us are different. Every one of us comes from a different walk of life, different background, different upbringing, different beliefs. Not everybody thinks the same, but what we can do is by speaking our minds and calmly engaging with people that disagree with you more than the people that agree with you, is finding a middle ground by doing so. And that's something that I think that we can take away from what we watched last night. And I hope that we see a lot more of it. Now let's get to the next topic. The Knicks just traded for Karl Anthony Towns. They sent Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle and a first-round pick in a blockbuster trade. Blockbuster. I was like, whoa, what just happened when I looked at it? And I'm going to give you a lot of different thoughts I have on what I think happened with this trade. My first thoughts when I saw the notification on my phone, I said, is this a fair trade? I wanted to look into it more, and I wanted to think about it, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it right here. My team is the Knicks. That's my squad right there. So I don't want to try and emotionally approach this conversation. I want to actually give you the details and the facts of me breaking down what this means for our team, the organization, and what it's going to look like going for us for the rest of the season right here. So the new starting lineup is going to be Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Karl Anthony Towns. That's going to be our new starting five going into the season. So my initial thoughts on the deal was like, damn, we lost DiVincenzo. And a big thing with losing DiVincenzo was, he has a lot of chemistry, the whole Villanova Knicks, right? And they literally brought Mikal Bridges in to just make it literally like it's what they had when they were in college together. So I'm like, damn, we lost DiVincenzo. And I know Karl Anthony Towns is a great player. And I started to think to myself, is Karl Anthony Towns, like how much of an upgrade is Karl Anthony Towns over Julius Randle? Because that's something that's getting lost in this whole trade talk. Is Julius Randle was a really good player. But when we look at him versus Karl Anthony Towns, I think it's pretty consensus. Everybody agrees Karl Anthony Towns is a better player. I would say Julius is a little bit more of a playmaker than Karl Anthony Towns, but every other aspect of the game, I think clearly leans in the favor of Karl Anthony Towns. So my thoughts on the deal, now that I've had a chance to think about it and look at it, I'm going to break it down to you unemotionally because listen, all I know is we got a squad this year. So we only going to improve on last year. So the first thing I want to talk about is what that does for spacing on the court. And especially as the game has evolved ever since the 7 seconds or less offense that we had with the Phoenix Suns and Mike D'Antoni and trying to get all these threes and shooting corner threes or getting layups, spacing is really, really important. Even in the 90s when the game was a lot slower and played more in mid-range and near the basket with big men and guards that could post up, you still needed shooters out there to create spacing. Spacing on the NBA court is extremely important because that's going to allow players to be able to get more one-on-one opportunities. Because when a double team comes, if you're kicking to a knockdown shooter, that just becomes a problem. What's worse, trying to stop somebody one-on-one or giving a really good shooter a wide open shot? You're better off just trying to guard a good player one-on-one unless, they're just really taking over. But that's the cat and mouse game, and that's what spacing provides. So I wanted to look up some stats from last year. So according to basketballreference.com, the average three-point shooting percentage in the NBA last year, this is for last season, 2022 to 2023. No, 2023 to 2024, I'm sorry. So this is the last season. The average shooting from three-point range is 36.6%. And the first thing I wanted to think about was, how do we compare to the league average now that we just swapped out a player who was a good playmaker but is nowhere near the shooter that Karl Anthony Towns is? It's actually funny. My mom, who's a diehard Knicks fan too, she loves Donte DiVincenzo because he shoots threes. She loves players who shoots threes. She's like, oh my God, we just let DiVincenzo go. I said, Ma, relax. The person that we got for him literally won the three-point shootout. He's a big man that won the three-point shootout. So just think about what that's going to do as far as the shooting on our team is concerned. So remember, the league average is 36.6%. Now, last year, the top two teams from three-point percentage were Oklahoma City at 38.5 and Boston Celtics at 38.3. Now, that number's a little bit skewed because Boston made way more threes than everybody else. Like, for example, even though Oklahoma City shot 0.2% better than Boston last year, Boston averaged making 16.5 threes a game, whereas Oklahoma City made 13.3. And guess what? The Knicks were right there at 13.2. So this is the starting lineup from a three-point percentage of how they shot last year. Now, let's compare this to the league average. Jalen Brunson, MVP candidate last year, had a career year, 40.1 three-point shooter. Now, Josh Hart, He's at 31%. He could shoot the three, but he's not really a shooter. He's more of a drive to the basket, the guy that gets the offensive rebound and drives it back up coast to coast and try to put some pressure on the defense. Then you got Mikal Bridges, the new addition from last year, 37.2. OG Anunoby last year, 39.4. And then our other new addition, Karl Anthony Towns, 41.6. And then one of the players that comes off of the bench, Miles Deuce McBride, he's a 41% shooter from three last year. So there's a world where you got to remember, right? When you're on a really, really good team, these numbers that we had last year, they're actually going to get better because players are going to have more open shots because we're going to be a better offense as a whole. So if let's say that there's a lineup that you want to play and you take Josh Hart out for a little while, even though the guy never comes out of the game, Deuce comes in, it's completely logical that next year there are moments that we may have 5 players that shoot 40% from three on the court at the same time that all fit with each other. I want you to think about that for a second. That all 5 players on the court, there's a lineup that will play at times that will be able to shoot 40% from the field, from three-point range. And even if you have Josh Hart out there, you still got 4 other guys. So he's the person that, let's say they double Jalen Brunson, he kicks it out to Josh Hart. Josh Hart is the type of player that will then put pressure on the defense and then can kick to somebody else. It's just nothing but shooters everywhere. Now imagine all the pick and rolls, the pick and pop that we're going to be able to play with Jalen Brunson, that now you have to decide who you're going to go with. And just for perspective, I wanted to pull up what the three-point percentage is for the starting lineup of the Celtics when they're at full strength, because KP, Kristaps Porzingis, is hurt right now, but I wanted to add him in, right? Because this is the starting 5 that everybody really needs to be able to compete with if everyone's healthy. So Drew Holiday last year shot 42.9. Derek White was 39.6. Jaylen Brown was 35.4. And Tatum was 37.6. KP was at 37.5. So you can see, as far as shooting goes, we're right up there with the best of them, and we could easily there's a scenario where we're literally the best shooting team in the league next year, or at least top 3. So that's what the spacing will do. And also, the other thing that spacing does, and the beautiful part about having all these shooters on the court, is that it allows you to be able to go one-on-one and get better driving lanes. We saw what Jalen Brunson can do from all different levels, whether it's near the basket, mid-range, or for three-point range. He's going to have more room to work with. Karl Anthony Towns is going to be down in the post. You double him, OG Anunoby is going to be wide open for a 3, right? You got Mikal Bridges. These guys are all athletic as well. So if they get the ball, they can fake the shot, bring it to the rim. We have multiple players that can then, from a trap or a double team, proceed to put massive pressure on the defense and actually get us even more wide open shots. And that's the beautiful thing about spacing that works like this. It's usually hard to get this type of spacing because it's hard to get this many shooters on one team that also fit within the positions that you need to be able to compete with other lineups that teams are able to put out there. Now let's talk about the calling card of the New York Knicks, which is defense. That's Tom Thibodeau's bread and butter. He loves to play defense. And let's look at the stats for last year, according to NBA.com. Team points per game against last year. Number 1, the Timberwolves at 106.5, and the Knicks were at 108.2. Now the Celtics are at 109.2. It's a little bit skewed because the Knicks play at a slower pace than the Celtics do. The Celtics literally just shoot as many threes as possible. They play a lot faster, so they're going to end up having more points scored. Like, for example, the Celtics, they scored 120.6 points per game last year, right? And then their defense allowed 109.2. Whereas the Knicks, they allowed 108.2, but only scored 112.8. So even though we beat them by a point on points per game, a lot of it has to do with the pace. We just had fewer possessions in the games that the Knicks played. Now let's look at how defense is affected by what happened with this trade. So We lost Dante DiVincenzo, who was a good defender. He definitely would put in effort and was a pretty decent defender on the Knicks. He's being replaced by a former All-NBA first-team defender in Mikal Bridges in 2022. He was All-NBA first team. Not only was he All-NBA first team in 2022 with the Suns, he was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. So we got a guy that we just added to an already solid defensive team, replaced a guy who's okay at defense, and replaced him with a guy that was number 2 for Defensive Player of the Year 3 years ago. So that's what we're doing with Mikal Bridges. Then you pair him up with OG Anunoby, who last year was voted the 4th best defensive forward last year. So out of the entire league, OG Anunoby was voted the 4th best defensive forward, and that earned him an All-NBA second-team defensive selection. So we have 2 All-NBA wing defenders. So all that, wing play that goes on in the NBA, I think we got the best 2 wing defenders in the league to go up against anybody that, is out on the wings. So then we talk about Karl Anthony Towns. He's replacing Julius Randle, who, he was banged up most of last year. Julius Randle was never really known for his defense. He was known for more of being a guy that had the ability to play make and could handle the ball for somebody his size. This is what Jokic, who's considered, pretty much like the best offensive player the last few years. Guys got 3 out of 4 of the last MVPs. He's literally unstoppable. Won a championship a couple years back. So during the regular season, Jokic had an offensive rating of 131. This is based on advanced analytics offensive ratings from the NBA. So 131, right? And he's an elite offensive player. The guy literally is one of the greatest offensive big men of all time. That goes down slightly this is for the 2024 season. It goes from 131 during the regular season down to, the playoffs, things tighten up, to 125.9 is his offensive rating when in the 2024 playoffs. In the first round against Anthony Davis, who's known as one of the better big men defenders that we have in the league, Jokic had a 133.9 offensive rating against Anthony Davis. Then he had a 120.4 offensive rating against Rudy Gobert, who was the Defensive Player of the Year. Jokic had a 119.5 against Karl Anthony Towns. Think about that for a second. One of the most difficult people in the history of the NBA to guard, Karl Anthony Towns, one-on-one, held his own. He actually gave Jokic the most problems when it came down to defending him in the Western Conference second round last year. I was pleasantly surprised to see the type of defense that Karl Anthony Towns was playing. He was committed. You could see that he wanted it. He took on the challenge. Now, no one's going to stop Jokic. You're just not going to stop him. But at least he bothered him. So to think that somebody that had that type of defensive performance, and this was over 7 games, the Wolves pulled it out at the end. This was over 7 games. Karl Anthony Towns showed he could play defense. Now, is he going to be able to stop Joel Embiid? No one can stop Joel Embiid. Just like no one could really stop Jokic. All you can do is try to slow him down or get them in foul trouble. And that's the beauty of him being as talented as he is offensively. You got to try and get the other team's big men in foul trouble. So, hold on. I am just making sure. I thought I wasn't recording for a second. So, that was what he was able to do against Jokic. So now when you add him and Mikal Bridges to the overall defensive construction of the New York Knicks, and with Tom Thibodeau being there as somebody that's a defensive-minded coach, there's a world where we're a top shooting and top defensive team in the league next year. Very, very easily, we could be top 3 in both and really push to being one of the top ones in each. Now that we have the spacing and the shooting and the defense, let's talk about what's really important as far as winning games, right? Is going to be shooting, It's going to be the spacing that you have on the floor. And then you got to have somebody that has the ability to make shots. And we got our guy in Jalen Brunson. He showed last year in the playoffs when everybody knew the ball was going to him. The Sixers just couldn't stop him. And that was one of my concerns with us having. He's not the typical like small player. Like he's a very strong, big body. That's what Kendrick Perkins always calls him, big body Brunson. He play like a big man sometimes. He put people in the post, hit him with the little turnaround. He gets in the paint. He has a mid-range game. He has a bag that he can go to in clutch moments during a game, and he showed that last year. And that's what championship teams need. You got to be able to shoot. You got to be able to play defense. And then you need somebody that you could count on to be able to make shots. And with adding Karl Anthony Towns, or even if Julius Randle was coming back this year, we wouldn't have had to have as much of an offensive load as Brunson. I don't think his numbers are going to be – I don't think he's going to score as many points as he did last year because he just doesn't need to. We're going to have a much stronger all-around team, and he's going to want to try and pace himself and save himself more for end-of-game situations or when it's really crunch time because he's got to allow the fact that we have those other pieces to help guide us to victory. So the other thing with that, too, in crunch time, because I'm going to say it, Jalen Brunson a superstar. For him to do the type of things he's doing in New York, nah, he a superstar, bona fide. We got players that can drive. We got players that can shoot. And the other thing, too, is bringing Karl Anthony Towns over, it fits in with the chemistry. Karl Anthony Towns, even though he was a number one pick and a preeminent, skilled big man in our league, he's used to being the number two, which is what he was in Minnesota. He wasn't the number one offensive weapon. It was Anthony Edwards. So he fits right into that sidekick role, kind of like a Anthony Davis did for LeBron type of situation where he doesn't have to be the one to carry the team. And I think he's going to thrive. There's going to be some games where he just goes crazy and the Garden is going to love him for it. We're going to be cheering him on. It's going to be a game he get 10 threes. I'm telling you right now, this guy's that talented on offense. And you know that, he grew up, I think he grew up being a Knicks fan. I think he's from New Jersey. So he's going to want to show out coming over here. And he's going to want to show that he's one of the best big men in the league. So we got Brunson as our closer. We got a superstar in Brunson. Karl Anthony Towns has the ability to be a superstar. But, we'll call him a bona fide perennial all-star for now. Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby are role players. That's one of the things that Boston had that made them so powerful. Derek White is damn near an all-star caliber player. Jrue Holiday was an all-star. And these guys are taking reduced roles within that starting five. That's what makes Boston so tough. And Kristaps Porzingis is an all-star caliber player as well. They've got players at every position. So you got players that would be all-stars that are role players. And I like the approach we took to try and get more players by paying a little bit less, by going and getting Mikal Bridges, signing OG Anunoby. Shout out to Jalen Brunson for taking less money so that it gave us more to work with as far as the salary cap is concerned, and bringing Cat over instead of us going and, sending everything to get Paul George. Even though the Sixers are going to be real tough. I'm going to go into more of a breakdown of all the other teams, and this is just I want to focus on the Knicks. So like I said, man, we got a superstar. We got all-star in Karl Anthony Towns, a clear number two that could take over a game. Brunson, there's going to be games where Brunson's just saying, hey, yo, go. Yeah, just take the ball. Shut it down. You got Mikal Bridges, who's a 20-point-per-game scorer in this league, all-NBA defensive first team. We got the two epitomes of 3-and-D guys with OG Anunoby and with Mikal Bridges. These guys are going to be suffocating when it comes to guarding wing defenders, and because they don't have to carry a large offensive load, they can expend a lot of energy because they don't have to carry the offense on the other side. They just got to hit threes. And then, they got the ability to be athletic and go and challenge at the basket. I'm going to love watching every game this season because this is the best team we had in, 30 years. I think the 90s was the last time there was a team that had a shot to make the type of noise that this team does. So those are the things that are going to happen. So the defense is improved, the offense is improved, and because of the way the salary cap is in the NBA now, it's harder to get max players and then still put players around them. Ever since the Warriors were able to do that nonsense with Kevin Durant and have like 5 Hall of Fame players on the court at the same time, it's been hard for teams to build that type of super team. Also, because of the depth of talent that's in the league, like the 4th, 5th best players on starting lineups 15, 20 years ago probably would be all-stars. That's just how deep the league's talent is. There's like Jamal Murray's never made an all-star team. I want you to think about that. Jamal Murray, one of the most clutch players in the NBA, championship player with Jokic, the closer on that team. This guy's never made an all-star team because there's so much talent in the NBA. Because there's so much talent in the NBA, you can't just win just based on superstars anymore. You're going to need a superstar, but it's going to be what type of chemistry can the team have, because now there's so many players that are superstar caliber in the NBA. There's a lot of players. So by having players that fit well together rather than just trying to accumulate like how Miami, big 3, that's it. They were just so good, they were able to win, and they just put pieces around them. So the chemistry that we have on this team is going to work really, really well together, and everybody should be able to play off of each other really, really well. And I think that because we have the shooting, because we have the defense, we got somebody to get the ball down the stretch that you can't just double team. If you do, you're going to leave somebody else that can make a play wide open. And we have another guy that can like really just go crazy. Randall can't go crazy like Cat. Cat could literally go get you 50, 60, 70 in a game. He's done it before. So he's like one of the most explosive offensive big men in the league. And now he's going to be playing in the Garden. So right now, I'm going to talk about what their odds are to win the chip. So the chemistry, I just want to finish on it. I'm real hyped and excited about this. The chemistry is going to be paramount. And I really like the way that we constructed our team. We'll see if it's enough to win. I'll tell you who I think probably has the edge. It could be the Knicks. But you're going to have to watch next episode or whenever I do the NBA preview, what I give as far as the breakdown for the rest of the league. Now, because we got that chemistry and all those things, DraftKings, I went to them for the sports book to see what the odds were. They got them at 8-1. It goes the Celtics, I think, were 3-1. Let me see what those were. The Celtics I think are, Celtics are plus 310. Thunder at 700, so 7-1. And the Knicks right there at 8-1. And the 76ers at 9-1. Denver 9.5-1. Timberwolves 10-1. Mavs 10-1. Milwaukee Bucks 14-1. Lakers 30-1. Suns 30-1. So we have the third shortest odds to win the NBA championship behind the Celtics and the Thunder as of right now. And the 76ers are right there. And the Knicks were like 10-1 in most books before this trade. Now that, basketball season hasn't started yet, but let's get to a season that's going on currently right now. And let's get to the NFL. Let's talk about week 5 coming up and look at what the power rankings are according to NFL.com. So they got the Vikings at number 1. This is the NFL.com power rankings. I'm just going to go over we're at the 4 games into the season, almost a quarter of the way home. Now we're starting to see how a lot of things in the league are shaping up. So according to NFL.com, Minnesota Vikings are number 1 at 4-0. Chiefs at 4-0, ranked number 2. Lions at 3-1. They're at 3. Buffalo 3-1, ranked at 4. Texans 3-1, ranked at 5. Baltimore ranked at 6. They're 2-2. The Commanders, they're 3-1, ranked at number 7. Number 8 is the Bucks. They're 3-1 right now, ranked at number 8. And then we got the Packers at 9 at 2-2. Steelers 3-1, rounding out the top 10 at 3-1. Now, let's see what sports books have for the Super Bowl championship. Now, this is according to the Super Bowl odds to win the championship on DraftKings. Kansas City is 5-1. San Francisco 6.5-1. Baltimore 8-1. Buffalo 9-1. Lions 10-1. Eagles 14-1. Vikings 14-1. Texans 15-1, Jets 20-1, Packers 25-1. It's interesting. There's like 5 or 6 teams that the sports books have higher that just aren't in the power rankings, but the power rankings are up until now. That doesn't, count the fact, things that'll happen in the future. Like, is Sam Darnold really going to be lighting it up like this in a playoff game, right? That's yet to be determined. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on these 10 teams real quick. Vikings, they got a couple of big wins, man. I've been writing them off since they got off to this start, but they beat the Texans, they beat the 49ers. Even though they didn't have CMC, they still had a lot of their receivers. It's a couple of really big wins, and they're about to get TJ Hawkinson back, who's one of the top tight ends in the NFL. So that's going to be a big boost for them. Their offense has been spectacular. They just been scoring points on everybody. I'm going to go more in depth on Kansas City when we do our Chiefs section. The Lions, they look good. The Lions, I never had issues with whether or not they were going to score a lot of points. The Lions, to me, were the second best team in the NFC before the season started, and they're continuing to put up points without a problem. I think the Lions might have the best offense in the NFL. If you look at when you factor in the offensive line that they have, right? So for running and for pass protection, they have one of the best offensive lines. They got Sam Laporta, one of the top tight ends. Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the top wide receivers. Jamison Williams has finally made his way onto the field, and you see the electricity that he adds on the field with big plays, and it just brings a whole nother dimension of explosiveness to this offense that they didn't have when he kept trying to fight through injuries. People forget this guy was a first-round pick, and, he had a lot of potential. Then you have the two-headed running back monster, which is what I think really takes them over the edge. You got David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, who are both they both do really well at what they do well, if that makes sense. David Montgomery is like more of a power running back. Jahmyr Gibbs then comes in. He's running. He's fast. He could catch the ball. They got a really great offense. Now, people are scoring on them, so we don't know what's going to happen as far as the defense. If CMC could get back, I know there's reports that he wants to see like a specialist in Germany or something about potentially maybe getting some platelet therapy or something like that. That's a bad sign. They're talking about he's got tendonitis in like both of his Achilles. It's looking rough for CMC season right now. If they get him back, that's going to be, they'll still be the team that I favor if he comes back looking anything like himself. But the Lions are looking good, man. It's going to be tough to get the Lions out of there. So if the Niners are still banged up, I'll probably lean towards, if the 49ers are still banged up, I'll probably still lean towards the Lions as what's going to be the team that comes out of the NFC. Then they got the Bills. So even though the Bills were 3-0 and scoring 46 points on the Jaguars or whatever they scored, and Josh Allen was the MVP leader, which I had mentioned on a previous episode, my question for them is still going to come down to, are they going to have weapons that can win when defenses are pressuring them? And those first 3 games were great. They beat those teams the way they were supposed to, but they couldn't even get 10 points against the Ravens the other night, and the Ravens ran all over them. And that's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Bills going forward. Dalton Kincaid is their really talented tight end. And Keon Coleman, you started to see him get worked back into the offense. They threw a couple of those timing routes on the side. So Keon Coleman is a former basketball player. He's very athletic. He can win jump balls and create separation, and he shows he has body control on the sidelines. He's going to be somebody that they need to bring along. I think he needs to be their top priority. Khalil Shakir has been their best receiver so far. So a combination of him and Coleman, they got to go be able to win one-on-ones, and then, Dalton Kincaid will help with that as well. So that's going to be my question for the Bills, and that's why the Bills are doing better than I expected because their defense is better than I thought it would be until they ran into the Ravens. So I still think they got Josh Allen. They got a decent defense. We'll see what they're able to do. They're going to start having some more big games coming up. They're playing the Texans this week. They just lost to the Ravens, and then they're going to be playing the Jets in a couple of weeks. We'll see how the Bills start the round into form. I mean, you can't put nothing past Josh Allen. He's, clearly one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So we'll see how they develop, receiving weapons as the season progresses. That's going to be a big sign of whether or not the Bills are going to be able to go far in the playoffs. So just keep a lookout to see if they're able to develop like a real reliable receiving threat that can dominate a game. Then they had the Texans at 5. I still think the Texans look good. They had that hiccup against the Vikings. The more I keep looking at stuff, the more I got to think about the Vikings they're definitely the surprise team of the year so far. But the Texans, they've been banged up. Tank Dell was banged up. Joe Mixon's been banged up a couple of games. We should still see them doing well. They have, like I said, it's a big game between them and the Bills. Both of them have an opportunity to show that they're within the class of the AFC, because with the Chiefs and the injuries that they've had, even though they're 4-0, they're starting to kind of regress and go backwards and not look as potentially dominant. We're looking for somebody to become the class of the AFC. Right now, the Vikings are clearly the class of the NFC with the Lions. I would take the Lions over the Vikings, but the Vikings, they still got, they put some work in this year. I can't take that away from them. So we'll see how the Texans and Bills play this week. Then there's the Ravens. They had the Ravens at number 6. I think the Ravens so far are starting to look like they will be the class of the AFC. You got to think they're one half a toenail from week 1's loss to Kansas City to being potentially 3-1, right? Like, they could easily be 3-1 right now. They had that hiccup against the Raiders. That was a bad loss. But the reason that I'm starting to really see the Ravens as contenders, one, they were an extremely dominant team last year, right? They went to the AFC Championship game last year, and it took Mahomes and Kelsey putting on a special performance to get them out of there. Here's the thing that should be scaring the NFL. They incorporating Derrick Henry now. Just give him the ball. I tweeted it out the other day. Just give Derrick Henry the ball. And I think sometimes these fancy play callers, like Todd Monken, who's the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, they want to do all these crazy things and show that they can come up with different types of offenses and looks that no one's seen before, can't be stopped. The truth is, they're a running team. They used to plug in any running back there. And those running backs were going to get 1,000 yards because Lamar Jackson is so deadly as a runner himself and can also throw the ball. They literally went and got Derrick Henry. People are like, oh, Derrick Henry is going to be washed up. He's 30. He's not the same. The man hit 22 miles per hour on the first play of the other game. One of the fastest speeds hit by anybody. And he's huge, bro. He's like an alien. This guy's not human. That's why I'm telling people, you got to realize Derrick Henry, even though, because people, especially, this is for getting in the weeds with my fantasy football compadres, they always look at running backs in their late 20s, especially when they're near 30. They always fall off a cliff. This guy is not a regular running back. This is Derrick Henry. You've seen what he could still hit 22 miles an hour. You're not supposed to move that fast. No one caught him. The guy ran the first play for 87 yards for a touchdown. The rest of the league need to be worried because he's clearly, you got to see the workout videos this guy got. And then he's like the LeBron James with the diet and the dedication that he does with the NFL. His workouts are legendary. He really, really takes his diet and exercise really seriously. He spends like $250,000 on his upkeep, and you could tell because he's not aging like a normal running back, and he's never been on a team like this before. And they're starting to figure out what run schemes work for him and for Lamar, or he's getting used to it because he's typically an eye back out of power formations, and Lamar likes to play out of the shotgun, and they like to do the fake and the keep, and it's like it freezes the defense. Now it's like, all right, he might give it to Henry, and it's gonna take 5 people, and you getting a concussion to tackle him, or Lamar might have it, and he gonna run the other way for 15 yards. They just simplified it. Just run the ball. And then off of those runs, they're just going to be players wide open through the middle of the field, down the field. And I think the Ravens are looking really scary. The way that they're starting to, like, their offensive line looked a little rough the first game of the season. They looked a little out of sync with him and Derrick Henry, and then they had that bad loss to the Raiders, and then here came the Cowboys, the cure-all panacea to get your game back intact. Henry ran all over them, gave him $150, and then he had 199 his last game. I don't know why they didn't put him in to get that 200, but they're showing that they can run the ball. Now, if you gotta really, really try and stop them, and their defense is still an elite defense, if you really have to try and stop the run, which you can't really stop that run necessarily, because there's just there's the two of the most dynamic runners in NFL history. You got Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. So it's like, who do you even try to stop? So if they can get that going and stick to their identity, which they kind of got away from, Lamar should have ran the ball a little bit more last in the AFC Championship last year, and that's something that people were talking about because it just looked like him and Monken were like, nah, we want to win this game from the pocket. But sometimes you just got to take the God-given talent you have and be that dynamic athlete that we all know Lamar Jackson is, two-time MVP. And the more times that you've been in those big moments, the better you're going to do. I guarantee you, if he's in a close game in the AFC Championship or in the playoffs this year, and he's thinking about my first, second read, not that he's taking off to get 5, 10, whatever yards he could get, and he's going to put it all on the line to get that win. That's one of the advantages that Patrick Mahomes has, and so does the rest of the Chiefs. They've been in so many of those big games. They know what it's like to execute when the pressure is on. Now that the Ravens have been there, it's a little bit easier the next time when the core players that you've had have been in that moment before. I guarantee you, if they had to play the Chiefs again from last year, they would have played that game completely differently. So that's what I think of the Ravens. The Ravens, to me, look like a legitimate Super Bowl contender as of right now. This is with the 49ers still getting their players back. This is what I'm going to go into the Chiefs more in depth when I go to my Chiefs section. And then, I'll go into my Jets section momentarily. But that's what I got to say for the Ravens. I think the Ravens are starting to round into being the class of the AFC. The Texans are right there. The Bills are there. But just looking at how the team's constructed and looking at what they were able to do in the past and what they've added and how they'll be able to move forward in the future, I got the Ravens as the class of the AFC right now. Then you got the Commanders. Jaden Daniels. I don't know how we're getting another rookie doing what he's doing right now after we had C.J. Stroud do what he did last year. Jaden Daniels is amazing. He's literally set the record. I think I talked about it last episode about how young quarterbacks aren't able to take what the defense gives them, and Tom Brady talked about how playing them too soon is dumbing down the offense so that they're not able to run more things, and it's a simplified offense, and this is what's contributing to scoring being down in the league, and blah, blah, blah. None of that matters for Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels is a problem. This guy set the record for the highest completion percentage through 4 games in NFL history. How is this possible? Him and Cliff Kingsbury is going to work. He just looks smooth out there. I watched that primetime game, him going back and forth with Joe Burrow. He just staring down the barrel of the gun, getting hit and just dropping dimes to McLaurin deep. I'm like, this guy is the real thing. Now, I'm not Mel Kiper or Todd McShay or one of those quarterback whisperers when it comes to how players are going to transition from college. I just start watching them when they get to the league or I watch the coverage. I didn't know Jaden Daniels was this good. I saw some of what Caleb Williams did in the preseason, and I thought, all right, this guy is going to be good too, but I never knew Jaden Daniels was this good. I'll be the first person to admit it. I didn't know this guy was this amazing. The way he runs the ball, the way he throws the ball, he might become the prototype because he could run like Lamar. I thought to myself, he looks like a baby Lamar out there. That's what he looks like. And for him to have this type of command over the offense at such an early point in his career, it shows that he's going to be able to do this mentally. It's what we saw with CJ last year too. The number one thing, in my opinion, that quarterbacks have to be able to do beyond arm talent, be able to make throws, beyond all of that, they have to be able to read the defense. You have to be able to read a defense and know where to go with the ball. This is what Tom Brady did so well. This is what Josh Allen is showing that he can do this season when he's not trying to force feed it to his main players. And this is what Mahomes is doing. And now, CJ was doing this last year, and now Jaden is doing it this year. I don't think the Commanders are going to make any noise when it comes to a playoff run, but who knows, man? You never know with the NFL. I just think they're too young. It's too early, but he's must-see TV. Anytime Jaden Daniels comes on, I'm watching those games, and I'm going to watch him the way I watch C.J. Stroud because he's just that gifted on the field. And to see all the different things that he could do so early in his career, it makes you really look forward to the way that his career is going to evolve. Number 8 on there is the Bucks. That boy Baker Mayfield, man. This guy's number 1 pick, didn't work out. He went all over the place, and I guess he found a home in Tampa Bay. When you got Godwin and Evans, it always makes it a little bit easier to be a good quarterback. We saw Tom Brady, what he was able to do with that team. You saw there was like a little back and forth between Baker Mayfield and Tom Brady. Baker said something about, you're just trying to bring fun. It was too serious when Tom was there. Tom was in a booth talking about, if I wanted to have fun, I'll go to Disneyland with my kids. I'm here to win Super Bowls. You start to see like the really great winners like Kobe over the edge, over my shoulder here. They were psychotic when it came to winning, and that's just what it takes to, like elevate to that type of greatness. You see this guy's in the booth, man. He's not even playing no more. He's still, this is how he feels. He's got to say things like that. So the Bucks, I think that eventually, who knows, maybe they get out of the division. Maybe they even win the division. But I don't think they make any noise in the playoffs. Packers, we're going to have to see once Jordan Love starts to get healthy. I know he just came back. We got to see how he starts to get going over the next couple of weeks. I still think the Packers can make some noise in the playoffs because Jordan Love has shown that he can be extremely accurate. He's a great thrower. He can make all the throws out there. The Packers do have weapons. They have a running game. So we're going to see what they're able to do. And then rounding out the top 10 power rankings through week 4, heading into week 5, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers, man. And I got one thing to say when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike Tomlin. How's Mike Tomlin keep doing this? This guy has like 8. What's the exact number? I don't want to disrespect him and shortchange the amount of years. Mike Tomlin, years coaching. He's in his 18th season. He's never had a losing season. I knew it was like 17 or 18, but I wanted to give the man the respect he deserved by having the exact number right. It don't matter who his quarterback is. It don't matter what's going on. The Steelers just have winning records. It's crazy. I was talking to my boy, and me and him were talking about like how great Mike Tomlin is as a coach, and who I likened him to was somebody like a Larry Brown, but like a little bit more successful than Larry Brown, because depending on the team that you have, it takes a different type of coaching style, right? So if you took somebody like Phil Jackson, maybe Phil Jackson doesn't win with teams that Larry Brown were able to coach and do really well, right? Like he was able to get the most out of players. Phil was really good at managing players, bringing out the best of star players, because it's actually a talent. You got to know how to make sure that your star players are on the same page. And that was what Phil was really great at. And that's kind of how I look at Mike Tomlin. He's really good, man, as a coach. It's something about the way he carries himself. He just maximizes everything that organization is able to do. And it doesn't hurt having TJ Watt and a really good defense. The Steelers, we'll see what happens with this whole Justin Fields and Russell Wilson thing. Personally, I know a lot of people on TV talk about how Justin Fields is more talented and, increases the ceiling that the Steelers have as far as making noise in the NFL. I personally will go with Russell. I'm a Justin Fields guy. I thought that he had a chance to become one of the elite quarterbacks when he was on the Bears, just because he's so electric with running the ball and he can actually throw the ball with some touch. But what I haven't seen from him yet, and we'll see if he develops it here in Pittsburgh under Mike Tomlin, is he's not seeing all right, 1-2, my read and being able to just get the ball out, right? You can have all the talent in the world. It's like Jamarcus Russell. Jamarcus Russell was the number 1 pick, had all the talent attributes, but he wasn't able to be able to get throws when he needed to get the throws in. Like breaking down the defense is the number 1 attribute a quarterback has to have. Look at Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning didn't have the strongest arm. He barely had an NFL arm versus what the standard other NFL arms looked like were. But the way that he was able to read the defense He was one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And at one point, people thought he was going to become the greatest quarterback ever. So to see whether or not Justin Fields is going to evolve that part of his game, because you could simplify the offense and just try to use his talent and put him in positions to win. But when it gets down to, you got to go win us the game. We need you to drive down the field, or we need you to make plays to extend drives to keep the other team off the field. Any of those type of situations, we'll see if he's able to develop that. I've always been a fan of his talent, and I'm curious to see if he's going to be able to evolve it more. I mean, he had a monster game recently against the Colts. But Russell, I think Russell Wilson gets a bad rap for that trip he took to Denver. We'll see if Russell got anything left in the tank. Again, the Steelers are 3-1 at this point, so we'll see if they continue to go with Fields. I think that they probably need Russell to make the playoff run, but we'll see. At the end of the day, whatever decision Mike Tomlin goes with, I'm just going to agree with him. I don't care what it is. If he tell me he going to play them both at the same time, whatever. He clearly knows what he's doing. So that's with the power rankings. Now let's get into my Chiefs breakdown. Oh man, they took a huge loss. Talk about variance. Me being an avid poker lover, variance is crazy. How Patrick Mahomes gonna throw an interception and go and try to tackle the person who got the ball and takes out Rashee Rice's knees. Oh man, I would be sick. As his best receiver. And he just took him out for most likely the rest of the season. There looks like there's some optimism from what the reports are that are floating around. Like maybe it's not a fully torn ACL or whatever knee ligaments might have been damaged or what structurally became damaged in his knee. I mean, I hope he comes back. I want to see the Chiefs have full strength, but that's a huge loss for them. He was their best weapon, and him with Hollywood coming back. Hollywood was already out for the year, and Rice has that chemistry with Mahomes. Mahomes trusts him. It's getting rougher and rougher for the Chiefs on offense. So now they're back to Kelsey and Worthy. I mean, Worthy got a 54-yard touchdown this last game against the Chargers. The Chiefs are 4-0. We'll see what happens if as they get into tougher games. Like they got the Bills coming up. I'm sure they got the Bengals and some other teams coming up soon. We'll see if they got enough offensive firepower to keep up with those teams now that Rice is down. They still do have Travis Kelce. He got going. I think he got 89 yards the last game. Xavier Worthy caught that 54-yard touchdown. They're going to need to develop him sooner and hope that Rice or Hollywood or both are able to make it back healthy for the playoffs, so that it at least helps them trying to get this three-peat. And if I'm their front office, I'm making calls. I'm trying to get somebody. We're going to talk about that in a second, who I think that needs to be, they're talking about getting traded, but I don't think they got a shot at them because it's the same division. But if I'm them, I'm looking. When you talk about doing something that's never been done in the history of the NFL by having a three-peat, I think it's worth mortgaging some of your future. I mean, again, that's why they get paid the big bucks to make those front office decisions. But I would be looking to make a move and try to get another weapon in there, like a DeAndre Hopkins, or I know Davante's in the same division, and I don't know if the Raiders will ever give him up. Give them whatever they want. You going for a three-peat. You going trying to become immortalized as the greatest dynasty of all time. I get it. You want to try and keep your first, second, whatever round picks so that you could continue to build this team, because the great dynasties of the modern football era are the ones that are able to get starting strong players in the draft because their salaries are much lower than players after their first 4 or 5 years who then have to go get that big bag. So they had to let Tyreek go. They let L'Jarius Sneed go. It's hard to hold on to really high-level talent in the NFL, and it's a hard salary cap. So you can't go over and pay luxury tax or do any of those things. So they got to – I would send it, man. Send it in. Go for the three-peat. But then again, we'll see if they're even able to get him. I'd give up a first to get Davante if I was the Chiefs, because I know the Raiders don't want to trade him within the division. So that's where I'm at with the Chiefs, man. It's going to be rough for them. But again, we'll see. I think a lot of it has to do with what type of time frame we're looking at for Rashee Rice as far as how long he's going to be out. And then if they get Hollywood before the end of the year, get him a couple games, get him acclimated, that's at least another weapon. And let's see what Xavier Worthy can become. Now, I don't know if he's Tyreek Hill, but, if he can get anything where he's not just explosive and a vertical threat, but like a viable option as far as different routes and different route tree combinations that they could run with him out there. And then Pacheco comes back. These guys they're just hurt all over. Lost their, two of their top pass catchers and Isaiah Pacheco. And nobody's feeling it more than me with Mahomes on my fantasy team. I might have to consider putting somebody else in for Patrick Mahomes. As crazy as that sounds. It's not real life. We just talking about trying to win a fantasy football game, which I'm 4-0, by the way. We're doing all right on Game 7 TV on our fantasy football league. Hopefully Mahomes can get it together. I do have Worthy, though. And like I said, I told you guys when I did my fantasy football breakdown, I go to war with Jared Goff. Man just went 18 for 18. He on my bench. So let's talk about the Jets now. Because I began messages and stuff. Oh, the Jets didn't look good, this, that, and the third. I agree. They look good against the Pats, but the Pats stink. You're supposed to beat that team by a lot. They got nothing going on over there, right? Aaron Rodgers looked healthy. You started to see the Jets fans start coming out of hiding because he looked good during the game. He looked kind of like himself. But the Pats are not a barometer for where you want to see if your team is elite or not. Then you got the Rainbow that they just played against the Broncos and couldn't even put up 10 points. You can't. I like that Aaron Rodgers took the blame and said, look, the offense can't lose a game where the defense gives up 10 points. It's 100% true. But more of an issue than I think is Aaron Rodgers is the fact they got to get Breece Hall going. Breece Hall and Braylon Allen are probably the second best, or if not, it's up there. I really like Montgomery and Gibbs, and they're just doing more right now. But I think Breece Hall and Braylon Allen could be the best 1-2 punch in the NFL. They got to get these guys going, man. They got to run the ball. Running the ball sets up the entire rest of the offense. Once you can run the ball, now Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to do play action. More people are going to be open. It just makes the whole offense easier. So Nathaniel Hackett, run the ball with Breece Hall, man. That's what you need to do. This guy is one of the best running backs in the league. You got to start giving him the ball. I think he had 10 yards last game. Like 10 rushing attempts hold on. Let's see what the stats were. Breece Hall. Stats. He had 10 attempts. I thought this is what it was, but I just wanted to make sure. 10 attempts for 4 yards. 4 yards on 10 attempts. He's averaging less than a yard per carry on this game versus Denver. And I get it. Yeah, Denver got a good defense, whatever. It don't matter. When you got Aaron Rodgers and you got Breece Hall, you got Braylon Allen, and you got Garrett Wilson, and the defense give up 10 points. I know they had a field goal at the end to win. It shouldn't have came down to that. It should have been an easy touchdown win. But on the bright side, I do think something like this, and this is what Aaron mentioned after the game versus the Patriots. You got to remember, the Jets aren't a part of a winning culture, right? And they're trying to create that winning culture. A loss like this makes you look in the mirror and is like, yo, how hard are we going? How serious are we about trying to make this title run? You had that awkward exchange with Saleh and Rodgers on the Patriots game. I didn't think that was too big of a deal. People were trying to make it a big deal, like they were having issues with each other. Aaron even said it was just, it's 2-score game. It's like, don't celebrate too early. It's like a saying that for anybody who knows me, they know that they've heard me use this saying. Don't celebrate until the dealer flips over their card. It doesn't matter what's going on until you've actually won. I don't care what the score is. Until the clock reads 0, just like if you're playing a hand of blackjack, it don't matter if you got 20 or you made 21. If the dealer hasn't finished using their cards yet, there's a chance that they can still beat you. So you don't celebrate until you got the win. No celebration until the receipt is printed. So I like that he has that mentality. And he said, hey, he made a bunch of throws that sucked. The rain sucked. He said he sucked. So the offensive penalties were really bad. But a lot of that just gets solved by getting the running game going. Once that running game gets going, I think a lot more things on the offense will continue to develop. We're still early in the season, and I think that a loss like this will help put things in perspective with the team. Hopefully the coaches are speaking to them about, do you guys really want to do this or not? Do you want to do something great? Do you realize what it takes? It takes every play, every moment, every day, every single thing that you got to put in to become a championship team. So that needs to be the cry that they have, and they got a chance to. They can't ask for a better opportunity. They get the Vikings overseas in Europe this Sunday. Go beat the Vikings. This whole narrative switches. The weird thing with those Europe games, though, I'm gonna go over my Week 5 preview in a moment. But that's an opportunity for you to be able to go and show that you are the team that you wanted to show everybody that you are. Teams have bad losses. The Ravens lost to the Raiders. They're still trying to figure things out. And everybody's looking at Buffalo like they're the best team. They washed the Bills. They ran them out of there, literally ran them out of the building. Now, when it comes to the Jets, one of the things that can help them on offense, and I don't understand why this hasn't happened yet. One of my predictions and one of the reasons that I was leaning towards the Jets winning the Super Bowl was I felt that they were going to go get Davante Adams before the trade deadline. Adam Schefter has reported that Davante Adams is looking to get out of there, wants to go to the Saints or the Jets, and both of his previous quarterbacks. And the Raiders have put out that they're looking for at least second-round compensation plus something else. To me, as somebody who's a negotiator, I think that, there's no way the Jets haven't already made these calls. If they haven't, everyone in that front office needs to find a new job. This was the most obvious thing that they needed to do. He's an instant member of the offense, knows everything with Hackett and Rodgers, and is still one of the elite receivers in this league. Can you imagine going out there on the field and having to guard Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Breece Hall coming out of the back, Aaron Rodgers under center? This is one of the best offenses in the league if they add Davante Adams, and it's not somebody that's going to need a lot of time to ramp up because he spent all those years playing with him in Green Bay. Davante Adams has only had 2 quarterbacks since high school before Derek Carr left the Raiders. Derek Carr was his quarterback in college. Aaron Rodgers was his quarterback in the NFL. And then when he got traded to the Raiders, Derek Carr was his quarterback till they moved on from Derek Carr. So clearly that relationship is fractured. And they know that they're not going to do anything. So you might as well get some sort of compensation for him. I said the Jets should even go as far as giving a first round if that's what it took. But a second and a fourth, a second and a fifth, a second and a third. If you're a good team, the second pick in the draft is going to be in the 50s. You're telling me that you're not willing to give up whatever player you would have got there to add somebody that makes you a viable threat to win the Super Bowl in New York after you guys already pushed all the chips in? I don't understand why this deal hasn't been done yet. I'm waiting for that Adam Schefter tweet that says, the deal is done. The Jets are sending such and such over to the Raiders in order for Davante Adams. And Davante said he prefers the Saints or the Jets. If I'm the Jets, I make this happen. The Saints, I don't really think it's going to change the trajectory of their season if they add Davante Adams. Yeah, their offense will become more explosive, but I don't know if Derek Carr is going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And I don't think even if adding Davante Adams to the Saints, I don't think that they can beat the Lions. They can beat even the Eagles if they get it together, or they can beat, Green Bay if they get it together, the Vikings. I don't think that the Saints are going to be able to get in that conversation. So Davante Adams, y'all need to go ahead and go get him. The news broke out. This was something that I thought was a really high probable outcome early in the season. You got to look at the Raiders. The Raiders weren't going to do anything this year. The reason that Davante Adams went to the Raiders was because he wanted to play with Derek Carr and get his bag. Now, he's not happy there. He's a little bit older in his career. He's a trending Hall of Fame type of receiver. Why not go somewhere and have a chance to win? It's not like he didn't add the Jets in there. So you can cross out that there's any potential issue with him or Rodgers because he floated those two teams as destinations that he would like to go to. So that's a prediction I made early on. And as soon as that came out, you guys already know I made the Jets with my Super Bowl pick preseason. I went and added another 200 on the Jets. I got them at 25-1 on Caesars because if they do get Davante Adams, I really think they should probably be more like 10-1. And, that's a plus EV play right there. Getting 10-1, getting 25-1 on something that I think can easily become 10 or 15-1 if they get him. So I think that they will. I think they'll send what they need to send. Listening to Adam Schefter break it down on ESPN, the salary, whatever they need to be able to do as far as manage the cap, all works out. So there's nothing stopping it except an agreement from the Jets and the Raiders. So they need to go ahead and make that happen. Then the last thing I want to recap for week 4, I missed my parlay. It was a real close one, though. Andy Dalton was 10 yards short. And then Amari Cooper had like a 70-yard touchdown called back. So we were real close to hitting that weekly parlay shot that we like to take. I did hit one on my primetime that I put on my Twitter. That was good. That was my first primetime one that I got. I'm already starting to look at what I'm waiting for a lot of the props to still get put up so I can put something in there for this week. If y'all want to see what that is, just tap in on the X. I'm going to have the link in there for you to be able to look so you can root for me. See if I could get one of those. But now let's go through a quick Week 5 preview for the NFL. We're going to go over some of the major injury designations on offense, some of my game thoughts, and then players that I want to target for potential bets or a ticket that I'll put in. So we got the Bucs and the Falcons for Thursday night. Mike Evans is banged up. No one on the Falcons offense beside Bijan is banged up. So because those guys are banged up, I'll be targeting Mike Evans, and I might be looking at Drake London or Kyle Pitts. Jets and Vikings are going to play 9:30 in the morning. I think it's going to be a get-right game for Breece Hall. I think he has a big game. I think they need to run the ball, get that going. London games are weird. There's no injuries beside Hockenson, whether or not he'll come back for the Vikings. London games are weird, man. I'm going to say it again. Sometimes you'll get a shootout. Sometimes you get a blowout. Sometimes you'll just get real sloppy play. That's the one that I want to see if both these teams go and they're crisp. This is a going overseas type of situation, so it's going to be rough. But I do look for the Jets to pull this one out. I got to stick with my preseason pick. The Panthers and the Bears, right, the teams that have been trading as far as number 1 picks are concerned. I will be looking for a DJ Moore revenge game. Deontay Johnson is questionable for the Panthers. The Browns and Commanders and Njoku is still questionable, so that leads me to looking at something with Amari Cooper. I don't think I'm going to play anybody from the Commanders, but, I don't know if the Browns are ever going to get right. Commanders look like they're just about to run them over as well. Dolphins and Pats, Tua's still on the IR. That offense is completely falling apart since Tua's been injured. I think he can come back week 8. I'm going to stay away from any of the props on this game. The Colts and the Jags, Ingram is still questionable, so that makes me lean towards going with Christian Kirk or maybe Brian Thomas as somebody I'd target. Richardson and Taylor are both questionable. I think Taylor missed practice today. So this is one of those games the Jags need to hurry up and get right, especially if Richardson and Taylor are out. They lose this one, I think Peterson is gone. Then we get to 2 of the big games that we have this week. We got the Bills and the Texans. So this is going to be one of those battles for trying to cement who's going to become the class of the AFC. So the Bills don't have any injuries except for Khalil Shakir, who twisted his ankle in the last game. I'm looking for Keon Coleman to have a big breakout game in this. This is going to be a shootout, in my opinion. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored. The Bills are 1-point favorites. I think that the Texans are going to put up buckets. They got Mixon and Dell are questionable. So, again, that's going to lead to C.J. Stroud throwing the ball. And, of course, I'm pretty sure everybody's going to be looking at this as the Stephon Diggs revenge game. That was the idea behind my ticket last week was 3 revenge games. So I'll definitely be looking at Stephon Diggs. I want to see what his line looks like, especially if Tank Dell is questionable. And, of course, he has the extra motivation of going against his old team in a shootout game potential with Joe Mixon banged up as well. They're going to have to lean on the lean on the offense. Bengals and Ravens is another big game. Even though the Bengals are 1-3, you're starting to see them kind of get things going. You saw Chase Brown be real explosive in the running game, had a couple of touchdowns last game. You saw T. Higgins start to get worked back into the offense. You see their Asiavas, something like that, I think is how you say his name. I'm not 100% sure. Their number 3 receiver. And, you still got Jamar Chase and you got Joe Burrow. Then you got, the Ravens, they're 2.5-point favorites this game. Divisional game. I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. And, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals are able to pull it out. I'm going to be looking at targeting T. Higgins as one of my plays for this game. For the Broncos and Raiders, Davante is questionable, so I'm going to stay away. I'm not going to go with anybody there. Niners, CMC is still out. Kittle is questionable. The news on CMC just keeps getting worse. He's looking at getting different, therapies to try and help regenerate the healing in his legs. And we're talking about tendonitis in both Achilles, so we're not sure when he's going to come back. Trey McBride is banged up for the Cardinals, so I might look, depending on what the line looks like, for Marvin Harrison Jr., but not somebody I'm targeting. I'm only looking for like 4 to 5 plays that I really like. Giants and Seahawks, Neighbors and Singletary is questionable. Neighbors had that concussion last game. Even though he's a spectacular rookie and a great offensive weapon for the Giants, not sure if he's going to suit up. I'd stay away from everybody in this game except for maybe Kenneth Walker III. Anytime there's a game where there's a potential blowout or a team has a lead in the second half, you could favor one of the running backs. The Packers and the Rams, Christian Watson is doubtful. Love is back. Kupp is still out. I think the Packers should win this one pretty easily. The Rams are a mash unit. It's going to be hard for them to put up the points necessary if Jordan Love gets it cooking. Cowboys and Steelers, Brandon Cooks is out. Makes it where Lamb and Ferguson are in play, but Lamb is always in play just because the type of volume that he sees. Russell looks like he's still out. And we'll see how, if Cowboys, their season is falling apart real quick. Then we got the Chiefs and the Saints for the Monday night game. Always willing to target Kelsey. Got to look at Worthy and then potentially Olave for the Saints. Could be a shootout. You do have Rashee Rice out. You do have Isaiah Pacheco out. So he's probably going to target Kelsey, his go-to guy. And we're going to still look on trying to get Xavier Worthy in there. So that's my outlook for week 5 of the NFL. Now I want to talk about what happened during the baseball season this year with Shohei Ohtani. Let me tell you something. I don't really follow baseball too closely. I kind of check to see what the Yankees are doing. I check to see what they do in the playoffs. But the things that Shohei Ohtani are doing are forcing me to pay attention. The man had a 50 home run, 50 stolen base season. It's never happened before. I waited to talk about this because I wanted to see what his official stats for the season were going to be. And let's go over what those were. So he had a .310 batting average, 54 home runs, and 130 RBIs. 59 stolen bases. He never had more than 26 stolen bases in his career, and this is the first time he's over 50 home runs. And the man has a flair for theatrical. When he got to the 40-40 club, he did it with a walk-off grand slam. Then when he got to the 50-50 club, he had probably one of the most epic games in Major League history. He went 6 for 6 with 3 home runs, 5 extra base hits, 10 RBIs, and a couple stolen bases. So when it comes to baseball, like I said, I'm not a huge follower of baseball, but Shohei Ohtani is must-see TV. I always got to see what Shohei's doing. And then when he started to flirt with the idea of potentially going 50-50, I started to pay attention. So once he did accomplish the feat, one of the people I like to go to when it comes to baseball is Tim Kurkjian. He's on ESPN. You just see the joy that he has when he talks about baseball. It's like me talking about football or basketball. You just see the joy that he has. Now, I loved baseball as a kid. I used to watch the entire game, all the Yankees games. I used to try to watch every game when I was a kid. But I just evolved to like basketball and football more. So I wanted to see Tim Kurkjian kind of sum it up in a historical context about just how spectacular what we saw actually was. And to quote him, he said, he's the most remarkable player I've ever seen. And I'm going to second that notion. You know, I wasn't around to see like Willie Mays or, Babe Ruth or whoever. But anytime that you start to bring up Babe Ruth's name in the records that we're talking about, because he's really the only person that was ever a great hitter and pitched at all. Oh, yeah, and that's the thing I forgot to add, that he was fourth in Cy Young voting in 2022. So the guy just had a .310 batting average, all those home runs, 54 home runs, 130 RBIs with 59 stolen bases, and the man is capable of pitching at a Cy Young level. I want you to think about that for a second. Because in 2022, he was fourth in Cy Young voting. He had 219 strikeouts in 2022. This is a guy who had 40 home runs that season. We've never seen anything like it. And he was in a market, he was in LA, but he was on like that other team with the Angels, never been in the playoffs. And we're going to see him finally in the playoffs. He signed the largest contract ever in Major League history for $700 million. And he's been worth every penny. And this is before he even started to get back to the pitching mound. We're going to see what he's able to do in the playoffs. The Dodgers are going to be one of the favorites to win the World Series. But with any player to be considered the greatest of all time, the regular season stats are just the foundation before you put the icing on the cake with whatever you do in the postseason. And that's just crazy to me. He has a career 3.01 ERA, and he's the only person in Major League history to have 500 strikeouts and 100 career home runs. And like I said, I don't even really follow baseball like that. Yeah, I follow Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. This guy is as good a hitter as Aaron Judge, right? Aaron Judge is one of the greatest hitters in baseball history, right? He hits for average, RBIs, and home runs. And he's doing it in pinstripes, which is always a place where it's the most pressure. He's doing this over there on the Dodgers, similarly, and then still getting 50 stolen bases just for fun. He's like, all right, I'm going to go get 50 stolen bases. And the man has a career 3.01 ERA. He was fourth in Cy Young voting. He's already a multiple MVP winner. He's going to win MVP again this year. And it reminds me of what it was like when Barry Bonds was chasing the 73 home runs. When we were watching somebody that was just so dominant. I had stopped watching baseball for a while, but when Barry Bonds was chasing the home run record and doing what he was doing, that's what this is reminding me of. That casual sports fans or people that don't even really watch baseball are talking about the things that Shohei Ohtani are doing. You see casual conversations of people that don't even really watch sports at all. Like, yo, what's this thing that they're talking about with Shohei Ohtani? Because he's that much of a generational talent. And we've never seen, I have to echo the sentiment of Tim Kirkshin. We never seen it before. So I want to see what he's going to do in the playoffs. I really want to see if he continues to be this locked in. And it's just special to see what he's able to do on a baseball field. There's never been a player that just is able to dominate, to hit for average, to hit for power, to be able to drive people in. And he has all these RBIs from the leadoff spot. I'm going to say that one more time. He got all these RBIs mainly being a leadoff hitter after Mookie Betts got hurt. Most people, to get RBIs, you need people on base. But, that's also a function of the Dodgers lineup. Their 7, 8, and 9 hitters are really good, so they're able to get on base. So when the top of the order comes back, Shohei's in position to be able to bring people in, and then got Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman to back him up, which is a crazy, 3 people to have consistently, like back to back to back in your starting lineup to hit. I talk to my barber about it all the time because he's a huge baseball guy. He's really the only person that really understands the gravity that I know personally, because everybody I know is big basketball and football. But to understand the gravity of how great what Shohei Ohtani is doing right now and where it lands in like historical context. For him to be this type of pitcher, for him to be this type of hitter, these are the things that, like, the only story that I could think of that reminds me of this is like when Barry Bonds was in his prime. And there's a story that I always like to talk about with Barry Bonds, because they weren't pitching him the ball. They would just walk him, because that's the thing in baseball. You don't have to deal with You don't have to deal with a hitter. You just pitch around them and just deal with the next guy. Why would you pitch to Barry Bonds? And that's what's gonna happen to Aaron Judge in the playoffs. Wow, they're not. I mean, unless Stanton could keep it up. But this is a Shohei Ohtani section. But let me talk about how legendary what he's doing is. It reminds me of what happened with Barry Bonds. So there was a week where Barry Bonds got 2 pitches that were strikes. Every other pitch for an entire week, they play damn near every day, for the entire week was a ball. And he got intentionally walked, all those things, right? He got 2 strikes to hit. He put them both in the cove. Both of them were home runs. That's how locked in he was when he was in his prime. And those are some of the echoes that I'm getting watching Shohei Ohtani. If we really see him get back on the mound, like if we even take away his pitching, and then he's already one of the greatest hitters. But if we add the pitching element back into it, and all signs point to he's gonna be back on the mound, this is gonna be one of the most historical players we've ever seen in any sport. And I felt I had to speak on it just because the magnitude of what he was able to accomplish in a sport where records are everything and some of the greatest records are rarely broken. He destroyed a record that no one ever thought was even possible. And just for a little bit of context, the only people to ever have both a 50 home run and a 50 stolen base season in their careers is Barry Bonds and Brady Anderson, but they did them in separate seasons. No one's ever done it in the same season, let alone add the numbers that he had and be as versatile as he is to be able to lead off, be able to hit anywhere in the lineup. It's kind of crazy that he's able to do stuff like this. He decided to take he's taking a year off from pitching, and he just went and did something nobody ever did when it comes to power and athleticism with stealing bases. So that's a shout out to Shohei Ohtani, who's going to be the MVP. And that's going to do it for this episode. I know we went over a lot of things today. I want to thank everybody that stuck with me here through the rest of this point. And I really thank you for your time. So until next time, I'm out of here.